Nigger psychiatrist, 24 hour, toll free. Why people can call anytime. Nigger psychiatrist. Thank God you're home. We heard you were in jail. My husband's beating me. What can I do? Bitch, buy a gun. Click. Nigger psychiatrist. I'm a secretary. My boss wants to sleep with me. What can I do? Give up the pussy, make the money. Click. Nigger psychiatrist. Nigger. I just wanted to say nigger. Click. I know somebody said, he's obsessed with that word. He's obsessed. God, stop him.
It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Broken glass everywhere, people pissing on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise, got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with the baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far, cause a man with a tow truck repossessed my car. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars go by, roaring as the breezes blow. A crazy lady living in a bag, eating out of garbage pails, used to be a fag hag, such a dance to tango, skipped the life and dango, a zircon princess seemed to lost her senses. Down at the peep show, watching all the creeps, so she could tell her stories to the girls back home. She went to the city and got so diddy, she had to get a pimp, she couldn't make it on her own. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
An executive told me one time, he said, Oscar, the reason that the black filmmakers are having so much trouble is because we whites got to protect our jobs and our families, etc. He said, look what you guys did to baseball. Look at the salaries they're making. Look what you guys did to basketball. Look what you did to boxing. If you guys did that to filmmaking, we'd be out. I said, that's not true. We'd all be making more films. We may even be making better films. And the investors would make more money. The theaters would be full. He said, no, we're worried about our jobs, so therefore we're going to keep you guys out. And it's the long and the short of it. It's the long and the short of it. We're talking about economics. You know, you take an actor like, let's say, Sidney Poitier. This guy was a box office draw for so many years. Then all of a sudden, blacks can't make it in film. Forget about it. Blacks don't make films that make money. Now Richard Pryor, he is so much in demand, he's booked up for the next 5 years. Everyone says, that was lucky. It was a phenomenon. Here comes Eddie Murphy. Now he's booked up. So the phenomena that we talk about in Hollywood, that's all in our heads. That's to keep us holding on to what we've got so that you can't get in. Unfortunately, the blacks are visible. So when you say you can't get in and you speak about blacks, you can point to a color. The same thing applies to young white filmmakers. They don't let them in either, unless they're family or relative. They got to fight too. Women, they got to fight. It's Hollywood holding on to its established order so that no one else can get in and get a piece of that money.
It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Well, you can't really hurt the images of blacks from the standpoint of, I mean, blacks' image, we have no image. Our image is everything that's bad, you know. I mean, the term white and black, the white hat and the black hat. I mean, black symbolizes the bad guy. Now, what did happen in those days, the so-called black exploitation films, is that white producers put together cheap films, took advantage of a hungry black movie-going audience, took advantage of hungry actors and actresses, paid them very little money, and stole all the profits, which basically came from that hungry black movie-going audience. After that, they then criticized the films that they had put out there through their media, basically dried those films up, then went on and used that money to get right back to their lily white films. Very simple. So they left those of us out there with nothing to do, ostracized and criticized for being in films that we really had no choice. And that's the way it ended.
There is no difference between black exploitation and white exploitation. You see, it is quickly, there was a writer named John Killens. He told me a story one time about a young man and his father, a boy and his father. And the young boy said, "Dad, every time I read a book about the man and the lion, the man always wins. But Dad, I always thought that the lion was the baddest cat in the jungle." And the father said, "Son, when the lion learns to write, he'll win." If you looked at the genre of film that this came from, I Was a Fugitive from the Chain Gang, Little Caesar, they were just as violent as these films. But understand why these films are called violent or more violent. You take Little Caesar and you make it with a black cast, it becomes a violent film. It's because of what we bring to it sociologically. I saw a film the other day where Al Pacino, who I went to school with in the Bronx, New York, is cursing and there's a lot of blood and violence, but no one calls that a bloody black exploitation film. I saw other films, Deer Hunter. If you had a black cast in the Deer Hunter, it would have been called black exploitation. So you have to understand that we, the audience, and I'm saying we, and look at me, we, the white audience, we are bringing something to this film, and when we look at it, these blacks fighting with guns, we say this is dangerous and this is violent. Understanding that, you either forget it and proceed, or you take it for what it is. You can go ahead and make your film.
Hey, look, I don't mean to be dipping into y'all's business, but you've been corporatized, blackularized, and superflied. You've been macked, hammered, slaughtered, and shafted. Now we want to turn you on to some brand new jive. You're going to be glorified, unified, and filled with pride when you see 5 on the black hand side.
Everyone said no one is interested in seeing a black comedy. You know, Oscar, blacks want to see violence, and these are white producers, studio executives telling me, you know, Oscar, blacks want to see violence and action and get whitey. I said, look, I want to say, that stuff is dead, you know? That stuff is dead. Nobody wants to see that shit anymore. Excuse the expression. Who cares about Get Whitey? Even Whitey doesn't care about Get Whitey. So what we got to do is do some other things. Everyone says, Oscar, comedy. No, blacks don't want to see comedy. I said, let's do it. The budget was small. We got together and we did it, and it made a lot of money. From that film came a lot of the television stuff that you see now on television. That's My Mama, The Jeffersons, etc., etc., etc. From that film. And it was a fight getting it made.
It's a real clean scene with a lot of laughter in between.
They made quite a bit of money, which was why we felt so betrayed. Because you would think if something made money, then they would want to put some more money in it and see it go on. But it didn't work out that way.
It was at a point in Hollywood's history when the movie-going public was low, a lull. Whites weren't going to films. They got tired of seeing that. They'd rather look at television. there was more invention on television. So the film industry, the film market began to drop because people weren't going. So they resorted to that secondary market. And once the secondary market got Hollywood some money, got its wind back, so to speak, they then began to establish the status quo, the whatever. They then began to go back to the position of, okay, we've got some money now. We don't need the blacks. We don't need the minorities. We don't need the women. We don't need none of that. We're going to do our thing.
Well, the emphasis was in the wrong place. You know, there was Pan-Africanism and people wanted to speak Swahili, and there was this whole concept of Africa. And they didn't understand tribes. They just thought Africa was one place and we could take one language and it would bring us together if we wore dasikis and naturals. But really, all we had to understand was our buying power, the dollars that we spent and what those dollars meant. And if we spent those dollars in the right direction, we would have created an economic base here, which would have given us power. So we could have operated from an economic base, develop a political base, which we are developing now, and we would have gained our freedom much quicker. But our leaders, a lot of them are very immature, and I say that, not that I'm that bright, but they're immature because the targets that they picked were targets that really would mean nothing in the future. We have the great historical March on Washington. As a person who believed in economics, what the March on Washington meant to me was symbolism. I didn't need it because I knew black was all right anyway. I didn't need anyone to tell me that I got to go to Washington and sing to show that I'm black. But what happened is that blacks spent a lot of money going to Washington, and most of that money went into the hands of white people who own those hotels and their transportation means and so forth. So ultimately in America, it's going to be economic power and political power.
I think we were treated as a fad instead of an art form. And I feel that once the studios got on their feet, they decided they wanted to do big budget films, and they would rather put them in films that appealed to a mass audience instead of an ethnic segment. They went into disaster films. From disaster films, they went into monster films. Now they're into high technology films. And I think it's monkey see, monkey do.
White fantasy films. I love the fantasy, I do. Love Chariots of Fire. I love that film. White people running track, I laughed for 2 weeks. I love that fantasy. Oh, come on, I love the fantasy. I saw Body Heat, white people screwing all night. I love the fantasy. No, I saw Annie, the little white orphan. I loved it. I said, look, somebody killed this little bitch before I do. Tomorrow, no, Annie, I'm killing you tonight. There'll be no tomorrow. I loved, what was that? That was a fantasy. I loved, what was it? The boxer. Rocky, I love that. 1, 2, and 3. I love it. A fantasy. White people do not beat up gray, big, black, wild niggas. They don't do that. Hoping to do Rocky IV, it's serious. He's a swimmer, he swims from here to England. There's a black man in a canoe. Shit, this white man can swim, god damn. Then I saw the fantasy, E.T. It could only happen to white people. You'd fall in love with a long-necked, big-eyed, green, ugly, green little bastard from space. Drag him home, let him sleep with your kids, let him eat up the food, let him try on all the clothes, a little freak, let him drink up everything, let him phone home, beg him to live with you, and you can't live next door to niggas for 5 minutes. The shit is sick and you know it. Oh, come on, give it up. It's some sick stuff.
When I first went to work at Warner Brothers in 1958, the only black person that you saw walking around in a collar and tie on the lot was either Sidney Poitier or Vincent Tubbs. All the other black people were coming on at 5 o'clock as janitors or to clean up or that sort of thing. There had been an occasional person who came in and worked in the pictures, the Bojangles, the Lena Hornes, and that sort of thing. But steady work, there were none. At about that period, corporations were encouraged to involve themselves in what was called corporate social responsibility. We coin that sort of thing in this country. We can find words for anything we want to do. It was a sort of, ostensibly, it was a reaching out to hardcore unemployables, or reaching out to a minority community to say, yes, we're interested in you and things are going to improve. The motion picture industry, for all of this sort of posturing and carrying on, has no serious intent to integrate itself. But occasionally they make these grandiose gestures. And this community relations thing was one of those grandiose gestures of showing corporate interest in the minority group. Now, what it involved was going around to various conventions and various groups and organizations and saying, look, there are jobs in the industry, come and get them. Or there are training programs here, come and be trained. Let us show you this picture, which is very good and saying a very good thing about your race. And you notice how many people are working now that haven't been working before. Well, that all went very well for a period of 2, 3, maybe 4 years. I was actually involved in the work for 8 years. As a pioneer, I got in it first, and I went with it to its death. We have in Hollywood more trained black technicians, actors, than you can shake a stick at, because we've had at least 10 or 15 training programs. Of course, once trained, where do they get work? Well, we have a union situation here that interdicts that. Although there have been some changes of it, it still makes it virtually impossible. You got to be in the union to get the job. You got to have the job to get into the union. It's a catch-22. Very difficult situation. We've got many, many well-trained people. They've gone through all the training courses, but they can't find jobs.
An industry, let's talk about Hollywood. Hollywood may not be interested in new talents coming up. They say they are, but with every new talent, you got a potential new Redford that you got to deal with. New De Niro that you got to deal with. You don't be pushing them around. You don't push them around when they get to that level. So you don't really want them to come through. You got enough of them to deal with. How would you like to have 5 Burt Reynolds to deal with, 5 Sidney Poitiers to deal with, 5 Diana Rosses to deal with, 5 Barbra Streisand to deal with? You got 1, that's enough. So you don't really want those directors coming up and through, those actors coming up and through, and then you black ones too? How many Richard Pryor's do you want to have to deal with? It's hard enough to deal with the 1. But you got to deal with him, because every time you deal with him, he makes you a lot of money. You got to deal with him. You have to deal with him, because he is the essence of why you are at work. So you've got to deal with him. You don't want any more. Now, with a Robert Redford, you can sit across the table and look at him. He looks like you. So you can say, well, let's make a deal and let's talk. And I'll give you $10 million, $5 million to go make a movie. Stallone, okay. You don't like me, Stallone. I don't like you. I'll give you $10 million. But when that actor is black, and you got to give him $5 million, not only doesn't he like you, you don't like him, it hits you in the pit of your stomach, because it's a big money business. And in order to keep people out, you simply put up barriers. The barriers for blacks are easy because you can see black because they are black. And with blacks, you don't have to be nice, polite. You can just kick them out the way. And who's going to complain? Who's going to say anything? Until the blacks start to do their own thing and make money at it, so that it becomes part of the social and economic and political system, whether we're talking film or any other business, nothing's going to happen. No one gives any person in any society anything. They've got to take it. Every single person out there who has a family, a house, no one gave it to them. They had to go and work for it. The difference is, if they're being cut off by exclusion, if they're being discriminated against so that they cannot own their house, have their families, feed their families, then that's criminal. That's criminal. That's not part of any system, whether it's a democratic system, a socialist system. That's criminal. And maybe we are dealing with a society run, formed, operated by criminals. I don't know. But it is criminal. And not only do I know and other blacks know, whites know it's criminal. So it's I know that he knows that I know it's criminal. And that's where we're at.
I think most of the pictures that are made in this industry is based on what D.W. Griffith said during that era, during that period. I always think of the industries have a big encyclopedia in which they go back and see, now what would D.W. Griffith would have done, since we're going to make a picture which has something to do with the life of black people. They don't understand it, and they do not want you to tell them. That's the horrible thing about it. When you try to tell them how incorrect they are, you'll find a writer who will say, these are my words, I don't want my words changed. I said, but your words are wonderful, you know, but you didn't originate those words, you just assembled them for this thing. And your construction about how black people live, how black people survive, and how we are is incorrect, because we are, as human beings, we face the same problem that you face. We live the same way you live.
Hollywood, I think, is racist. I've always felt that. I mean, although I'm a part of it, I just think it is. Right from the beginning with Birth of a Nation, which they say is an art and the best film ever made, and I find it insulting and racist. And they gave Lillian Gish, and I know America loves her, an award, old stringy old white lady, an award, and I just think she should be apologized for being in that movie, because I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a very racist movie. And it should be burned. They lost part of it, but they should find the other part and burn all of it.
They say it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and I hate it. Because when I look at the screen, I couldn't really identify with Red Butler. I was looking at Big Jim, you know, running behind the runaway carriage saying, I's a-coming, Miss Scott, I's a-coming. And, you know, white people, they always have their own identities. And, you know, as they were talking, I would say, my God, don't they realize that this film has the greatest stereotypes of any film? And, you know, it's just very, very bad. It just seems like it should not have to be that way. You know, people have to make other people look unintelligent or foolish. It just seems like something's wrong. Well, basically, I was born in the South, and my first experience with black movies were the Cab Calloway Westerns, when we used to go to a little place on Wednesday nights, you know, and it was for blacks only, basically. And then after that, of course, there were no black movies, but there were the stereo black people in movies, Stephen Fletcher and Mantan Moreland. And it always was a convict or someone rolling their eyes or someone that was very fearful or trifling or foolish. Very bad images.
You will howl with glee at the screen's laziest comedian, Stephen Fletcher.
Can you keep a secret without running all over the neighborhood and telling it? Bad as my feet is now, I can't even walk all over the neighborhood.
Well, at that stage of my life, I hated the images because I always hated discrimination and racism and ignorance. But at the time, I didn't think of going into the movies because I was basically an athlete and a student. So I know that it stuck in my mind that it did not represent real life. And most of all, it did not represent me.
The pressure was exerted as strong as it could be at that time by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We didn't have any activist group that was constantly on the case of Hollywood about these things, but we were aware of the fact that the only woman to win an Oscar was Hattie McDaniels for the role as a maid in Gone with the Wind. This year, the only nominee for an Oscar is Alfre Woodard, who is housekeeper to a writer in the picture Cross Creek. So the industry pays attention to black actors or actresses only when they are in sort of demeaning roles.
I got something to ask you.
Certainly.
You satisfied with my work around here?
Of course I am.
Then how come you let me go just like that?
I assumed you wanted to go.
So what if I did want it to? What kind of person let another person do something they know would hurt her?
Geechee, I don't understand you. I don't have any right to stop you.
You do if you care about me. You know what Leroy gonna do to me? Use me up and spend all his time in juke joints drinking up my paycheck just like before. I got a good life here. I got a better life at the creek than
I don't want you to go. I thought that you knew that.
How am I supposed to know that? It's easy to get somebody for cooking and sweeping.
I think of you as a friend.
You care about me and you're gonna let me go away?
There aren't any jobs. There's plenty of parts, but people do not have the courage, by and large, to cast across the board. As long as there's films being made, there's parts for black people in them, but most, by and large, most casting directors, producers, and networks, they do things like this. On a breakdown, the agents get a breakdown, right, for each production. It'll say, Sue, a light-headed vegetarian blonde who sometimes reads Hess when she's, sweeping the floor. Bob, he's a lowlife. He has the mouth of a sailor, and he can't quite come to grips with the fact that he only has one leg. And then it'll say, Janet, a black woman. So that's when they know to call. And then if they call, they might call everybody from A to Z.
I know that all the white actors that we as blacks know, love, and admire are strong actors who work on their roles along with the director. But in my experience in this industry, we are so grateful to have a part that often we do roles that aren't us, that are stereotype upon stereotype, old, tired stereotypes that we don't even believe in, that are written for us. And then we sit and we watch our films and we're embarrassed to see ourselves.
See a Paris model. Jess and Annette each did 22.5. Show them your wares, bitch. See what you can get if you're good. That's Turnpike. She did 26.5. She's called Turnpike because you gotta pay to get on and pay to get off. China, come here, baby. China did 29. Sweet piece of oriental meat. This is Frenchie. Gator used to call her Boeing 747. Show him why, bitch. She did 27.5. And that sweet Annette, show him that smile, you sweet thing. She did 30,000 last year. And where's my baby?
Right here.
That's Taffy. This bitch grows $37,500 working part-time. They call her Colonel Sanders because she's finger-licking good.
I played a lot of prostitutes very early in my career in New York. I was very young. And I was in my teens. And I played prostitutes then. And as I grew, as I matured, I lost interest in playing prostitutes, especially the kind that are gang-banged and beat up. And I just didn't want to be seen being abused, so I didn't want to do those kinds of parts. Gang-banged and, little nasty parts. Then I thought if I was offered a very complex, high-class prostitute, Jane Fonda. See, they don't offer black women those kinds of roles where they have the heart of gold. Usually, they photograph you very exotic, very sleazy, on the corner, cursing somebody out, scratching your ass. Very, very uncomely, degrading. And they'll tell you in a minute, this is the juicy part, but I don't want to project that image, And I've had white people in this industry argue with me, well, if it's a great part, give me a part like Jane Fonda. I would consider it.
sometimes I say, why me, you know? Like I got a script once, and the director had actually written a note on it. I didn't know him, but he had written a note on the front of the script. Dear Diane, I would really love you to do this part, signed, and I'm not going to say his name, okay? So I got the script, and I thought, wow, hey! And I read the script, and I looked at the part, and it was like so awful. This woman was she was a junkie, she murdered guys, cut their throats, she was a whore, but like the lowest of the low, like crazy on PCP, I mean, just terrible. And all I could say was, why me? You know, why me? What I usually just say is, no, I don't want to do that, you know, I pass. There's enough parts like that. Everybody knows that black women can be prostitutes and drug addicts. I don't think that we need to emphasize that point anymore, you know, and it's only the reality for a very tiny percentage of the population, you know. So I pass and I look for something else.
It was segregated when I was coming up. And I went to segregated schools up into junior high school, and we were integrated. But the town was divided between black and white. Like you stayed in your neighborhood and you didn't go in the other neighborhood. I was fortunate to live in a black community where these old black movies were shown made by blacks. And then we'd see these all black musicals with Sarah Vaughan. And there was one singer named Savannah Churchill, who I liked, and Billy Eckstine, Billie Holiday, you know. And these weren't shown in white communities. These were made for us, shown in these little black theaters.
I shouldn't be so crazy about you, but what can I do?
Listen, Peter, you don't want to do what's on your mind.
What's on my mind?
Marry a negress. You don't want to marry a negress.
Marry a negress?
No, Peter, no.
I never saw Oscar Micheaux with any books on filmmaking or anything like that. He just grabbed it somehow, and he was a genius. He was gifted to that type of thing. Micheaux would go to work and take everything that he had to do and do it himself, and sometime if he was short of an actor, he'd get off behind the scene and do that as the voice. And I used to tell him, I said, you certainly hammed that up. And he said, you hammed up my picture, too. I tell you, I never met a person that I liked any more than him. That's how I happened to make 14 pictures with him and became the first Negro leading man in motion pictures.
My estimates are to be taken at face value and my judgment in the matter final. Now, I don't want you gentlemen to misunderstand the attitude which I'm forced to assume in these relations. The situation is a phenomenal one, to say the least.
So a lot of the finances was raised on me. And he wanted to create a black Valentino or a black leading man that would appeal to the public. And he thought, well, I think I did in those days, that I would fill that order. Because around the country, say for instance, now we're based in New York, the southern places, you didn't have theaters. I mean, you didn't have Broadway shows. These people didn't have a chance to see well-dressed people. And I was classed at that time as one of the well-dressed straight men of the American stage. And not seeing all of that, to bring this to their neighborhood, theater, was a great thing. And those people, and especially black people, couldn't go into the white theaters only on days that the white theater owners would allow them. So you see, this was quite a thing in those days, and he would, as many times as he could, arrange personal appearances for me. And to make an appearance in those days, well, they were lined up around any corner. In the winter, he took care of writing and things like that. Now, early spring, he would go on the road. He would rent a car and a chauffeur and go on the road, and he would sell his novels to these various theaters, and this is how he would book. And he'd take a photograph of me, and he said, look at there. Look at this boy here. I'm using him. That's the new Valentino. And look, he'll do all right for you. And these guys would buy this sort of thing. And he'd raise money. You know, sometime he didn't even have a script. And he'd sell it on 2 pictures. Myself and a girl, and she was Ethel Moses. And he'd come back and he'd call me. He says, we're going into production. When he used to use these choruses, I'd say to him, I said, I have the master script. I don't see anything in there that calls for this chorus and everything. He says, look, we're playing down south, aren't we? I said, yes. And he said, these pictures are going to South America too, aren't they? I said, yes. He said, well, let's show our beautiful girls with beautiful legs. Well, he hired the choruses from the nightclubs. He said, I'd like to use the chorus. I'm making a motion picture. You had no problems. He had a bus waiting there, picked them up, and of course we'd have a cabaret scene. And we had a lot of fun in those days. We enjoyed our work, and I think we accomplished a purpose.
Caroline, this is a white child. Look at it. Its face is as white as snow. You must turn it over to the police. To try to keep it and raise it would never do. It's a white child, I tell you.
Wonder what's the matter with her? Why does she act like that? Because she's stuck up and don't want to be colored. I never. Oh, hello. Hello. My mama sent me to school. I've never been and don't know the way. If you'll show me, I'll give you this big red apple. Oh, sure. We'll take you there with us. Oh, thank you.
Lena Horne, Dorothy Dandridge, Eartha Kitt, some actors like Frank Silvera. Frank Silvera was unusual because he played all sorts of roles. He crossed over. He played Spanish, Italians, and because he was not discernibly black. But for the women, like Lena Horne and Dorothy Dandridge, they had difficulty because they also were not discernibly black. They were neither black nor white, and they had difficulty. a rather tragic result, as a matter of fact. I'm sure that you know this from history.
What do you say we drive to a little place I know on the edge of town? I'll show you more fun than you ever had.
You're going to jail.
Well, I met Dorothy Dandridge when she was in her late teens or early 20s. And she was very vibrant. She always reminded me of a ballet dancer. You know, she was always moving about. She would love to have been a ballerina, or as much, if not more, than becoming an actress. She was demure, she was petite, she was, and her mannerism, if you didn't know her, you'd say, well, God, why doesn't she stop pretending? But she wasn't. She was not pretending at all. That's the way Dorothy was.
Doesn't the fellas telephone me or asking me to make a date? I'm holding out for something special, but I don't know how long I'll wait. Where will I wind up? Will I be true to? Ain't made my mind up, waiting for you to. What you say, brother? What you say, boy? Anytime that we gotta wait. 10 o'clock sharp on the corner. See that you're right in that picture. 'Cause I ain't the kind of a man that'll stand without hitching. Now you got your little filly at the starting gate. Got a little filly who is raring to go.
She used to entertain lavishly. Gary Cooper would come with his wife Rocky, Peter Lawford, all these people would in and out of her place. Dorothy had a vision that so many people didn't have, that as far as casting, interracial casting. She used to say to me, listen, Joel, she said, why does a white man feel that he can sneak into my house or into some other black woman's house and spend the night with them or half the night in bed with, and then you can't see the same kind of thing on screen? Why can you, why you know, what is wrong? So she fought for integration, not for just to integrate the bedroom, but in every aspect. This is how she felt. And she would make these requests and wanted certain script changes. Then, of course, she thought also that if she would become associated with certain well-known actors, like, for instance, Kurt Jürgens, Otto Preminger, the director, that out of that would develop a marriage or something. When she started telling me about Otto, I said, Otto doesn't have no intention of marrying you, darling. I said, he's not going to leave his wife for you. I said, so just, you know, well, but they want to send her the best champagne, caviar, and goes to some remote place that they had a house, you know. But then they would later, it would end up telling her, well, look, I'll buy you a chateau, I'll buy you a flat, but I will not buy a license to marry you. But she thought that she could change the whole imagery here in the motion picture industry, that a top director, a top actor would marry a black. I said, no, no. Where are their friends? You know, it just doesn't work that way. Dorothy used to call me like 7 o'clock in the evening, and she would hang up the phone the next morning at 6, talking. Out in the middle of the night, I'd sit there, drink, wash my socks, cook. I wouldn't turn her off the phone. I just, finally she said, what are you doing now, Joe? I said, I'm shaving. It's the next morning. I listened to her, because she wanted to talk.
Let's see what they say about me.
Oh, you're gonna get a good man, Carmen. Yeah. Here's your little secret.
The 9 of spades.
The old boy, plain as can be, death got his hand on me.
If you want to work, you better work because you're not black. And this is a sort of a thing that has happened to me. Many times I'm called on and they ask me, would I step in the other room? And I said, well, you called for black actors, I'm here. I wish they had said Negro actors, but that's the way they have it, as blunt as they want. And I step in there, when I step in there, they says, well, we have a white role. So I said, so I take it.
What happens is that I don't get them. I don't get the parts. They said, yes, we wanted to see somebody black, but, gee, I don't know, not your kind of black person. There's a wonderful euphemism. Now they say you're too attractive. She's too attractive for that part. He's too handsome. And we're supposed to go home and take that as a compliment. Meanwhile, we don't get the job.
Who do they believe? The big black boy who's supposed to be running this place? Or the white Christian American? You crot. You vicious, slimy, rotten little... Let me tell you something. Do you know what I wanted most? Despite what you are and despite what you were, I wanted to help you. I wanted to kill you, and I would enjoy to kill you right now with my bare hands. But more than I wanted to kill you, I wanted to help you. Do you know what that makes me? That makes me more than just a good man. That makes me a doctor. Okay? You come in here day after day, and you spout that stuff about white Christian America. And I took it because that was my job. Now, let me tell you something. This is my country. This is where I've done what I've done. And if there were a million crooks like you, all sick like you are sick, all shouting down, destroy, degrade, and if there were 20 million more sick enough to listen to them, you are still gonna lose. You're gonna lose, mister, because there is something in this country. Something so big, so strong that you don't even know. Something big enough to take it from people like you and come back and nail you into the ground. You're walking out of here, you are going nowhere. Now get out!
Sidney's an unusual person in that he's what we would call a bootstrap person. He virtually made himself. He came into this country, he could hardly speak the language. And he spoke it with what we call a Jamaican accent. And he had to learn to speak the language by listening to radio. And he went into the theater to clean up in order to get opportunity to look at other actors' work and learn how to act. So there's a whole Horatio Alger story there that it was easy to pluck out of the miasma of information that was around. So you built the Poitier story on that. But he had a particular electricity about himself, a particular bearing, a particular presence that was electric on the screen, but there's something in it that distinguishes him. You pointed that out to the public, and then they picked up on it very quickly. The types of roles that he initially did, Band of Angels, the pictures that he did with Clark Gable, he was a rebel with limited ability to revolt. But because he postured himself as a rebel, as anti-establishment, he became a very popular figure among blacks. So it was easy to carry that sort of Matt Turner attitude of his into developing his whole personality. And he was this standard bearer for blacks in America as our motion picture performer. And we just sort of positioned him there and kept him there.
I had a speech, but I'm not going to make it. When I started in this business, on my first job, I was in concert with one other black man, and he was the shoeshine boy on that lot. I stand before you today the product not of Sidney Poitier, but of all the black artists whose lives and creativity were frustrated by those studios. It takes a group of awfully strong men to persevere. And I'm here today in the company of many of my compatriots who did just that. The door has only recently opened, you know. But I'm glad to say that stepping through it are some awfully strong men and women. I just pray that we build this institution into one of enormous dimensions, because we have an awful lot of names to put there in the future. I got an award once that was called the Academy Award. This is the Academy Award.
Raymond in the hip-hop world is known as Pop and Break. Mr. David Tenorio, also a multi-talented dancer, hailing from Long Beach.
Woo, that looks serious there.
David Tenorio.
Yeah.
With your bad self.
Look at that. All right.
Style, technique. That's the mark of an LA breaker.
Woo.
Swipes, do it. Make it look easy. We don't encourage any of you kids to try the head spins. These are professional break dancers. They know what they're doing. Wonder Wave with the hydraulic pump. Pump it up, Wonder Wave.
Right.
That's true.
Unity. That's the one thing that frightens white people is unity between blacks. They don't want us to have anything in common because we like what the favorite dance step is. We can spread that quickly. We all dance the same. It has variations throughout the states, but it's all the same. And if we ever communicate the way we do when we dance, we'll be a problem in America.
We don't get stuff done, like good films, because we don't have the people behind the camera, we don't have the producers. The black community that has a lot of money is very, very conservative, you know. They're not about to invest it in a film, you know. And there are a lot of very rich black people in America, but we don't see them, we don't hear about them, you know. Until these people get up off some of their bread and put it into films, we're not going to have any good films. We're not.
The system wasn't built to do me any favors unless I earn it, do more than anybody else would have to do in order to get a piece of it. So that I've always known. What I didn't know was the detriment of what we suffer in our efforts to do things together. The fight that, our biggest fight that we have among ourselves. Because see, in the ghetto I had unity because I was a nice guy and I got over. Whenever somebody got caught, they never squealed on me because I was a nice guy. Here I'm a nice guy and my brothers and sisters take advantage of me. They put arrows in my back and knives and stuff. But I always protect myself there, where I only give but so much. I'm giving what I can afford to give. They don't know that, but I give what I can afford to get without being hurt.
As a general statement, I would say that among black people in Hollywood, I don't think there really is any real kind of fraternity. I think there's a lot of competition for jobs and for attention because there's so few jobs, and when the industry throws out a few crumbs, you have so many people running to grab those crumbs. So it seems to me that it's hard for blacks to be supportive of each other, really.
The reason that black people in America are together is because of discrimination. If it wasn't for discrimination, no need for a black to deal with a black other than if you're on the same economic level or social level or so forth. Because black isn't positive or negative. It's just a color. If you deal with the history of how blacks got here, the splitting up of families purposely, the different tribes, different languages, different customs. Africa is not like one country and one people. Africa is many people, many customs, many traditions. It starts with not having any true culture, no grandfather to tell you what you are. I am Igbo. Igbo is this. You know, in the Jewish culture, you are Jewish, we do this. We have been merchants for many years. We must protect each other. The world have ostracized us. You have this responsibility to deal with. We don't get that, okay? So we start with that. Then we start with the technique of brainwashing that's perpetuated on us. I mean, the brainwashing technique was so bad until we had cultures within cultures. We had light-skinned black people that didn't want to associate with black people. We had colleges in the South that were black colleges that you had to send a picture to. And if you didn't have what they call good hair and light skin, you couldn't be enrolled in that college. So within our own group, there was this whole thing about being light and black and all of these different things. So to get rid of all of that and have television show you these blue-eyed blondes and wonderful-looking curly-headed men, and then you don't look that way. And then you get a chance to play some football, and they give you a little shot and give you a little money and maybe give you one of those girls, and you really think you're living, you know. And I mean, you don't want to care about anybody else. You just want to be out there and enjoy that stuff because you've been given an entree level that's not on the top, but at least you're kind of in the ball game. So there's a lot of things to fight to bring about the kind of unity that I'm talking about and the economic support that blacks need, you know, to give each other in order to emerge as a viable part of the society.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man of our times, Mr. Robert Smith, Jr. Robert wears leather, two-piece, red tie and tan, cross black belt with a gold shimmerling. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Smith comes to you in the tiny tot form and our children. Ladies and gentlemen, the team, Michael Jackson, cursing, the Thriller, Ingrid. Ingrid from Immaculate Heart. Mr. Michael Jackson.
When you begin to look at the new technologies that give Hollywood a run for its money, like the music tapes, MTV tapes, you know, you then have to start to understand what's happening. The kids that buy those tapes are black and white, yellow, green, red. I mean, they buy the tapes. Michael Jackson didn't happen because he was just an alien from another country. you have talent, sure, he's black, and all those other things that come into play. Michael Jackson is selling in South Africa. I mean, you know, who buys records in South Africa? The blacks don't have that kind of money to make him a big seller. So something is, it's gonna come around. As I said, Richard Pryor is one of the biggest box office draw, guaranteed. If you get Richard in a picture, you're guaranteed to make money. It's gonna happen. It's going to happen. Eddie Murphy's first film didn't become an Eddie Murphy film from the outset. He was an adjunct. They didn't use him to raise the money to make the movie. They're doing that now.
The other cultures will use the principles, they understand the principles, they set their goals, and they pursue those goals. They achieve the first one, they set out on the second one. And in blacks, we do great things, you know, and flashy things, and we have great athletes and great musicians. But then we're basically controlled by other cultures. And for example, the black superstar today, to me, is a 1984 Uncle Tom. Because while he's trying to get another contract for an additional $1 million, he's represented totally by white people. So he's not reaching back and bringing in any black lawyers or black accountants or black managers. He's just so happy to be considered an idol within the society. He doesn't understand that in 10 years, all that will happen is that will be broken, and he wouldn't have created anything that would be lasting for his kids or his grandchildren. So until we understand the principle that every other culture seems to understand, we're always going to have to ask someone to do something for us.
Don't forget to register to vote. You know, it's a man's world unless women vote. Are you registered to vote?
And Jesse Jackson running for president. Just think of that. Jesse Jackson. Do you know what will happen if he runs for president? What would actually happen? Dead white people will get out of their graves to go vote. Dawn of the voters. They don't know why, they just have to go. America is not ready for a black president. They're not ready. Come on, they're not even ready for a nigger vice president. Let's be realistic. Which would work, it would be wonderful. A nigger vice president, think about it. Be perfect. That would assure the president wouldn't be assassinated. Oh, ain't nobody gonna shoot with a nigger vice president. There'll be no shooting. President can ride in a convertible all day, all night. There'll be no shooting. Where's the president? He's asleep in the convertible. He's safe.
Well, a change has to come almost as a political one. Our political leaders has to understand economics better. Let's say that if Jesse Jackson had joined forces with the blacks in Hollywood 10 years ago and raised $100 million, then we would be in the film business right now. In other words, you can't do it the same way. It has to be almost a political movement. It has to catch the conscience of the people. It has to be pointed out by our black leaders. And it has to be backed by our black leaders. And we could make that entree because then the studios could not afford to keep us out. So if we're going to go about it that way, then we need the support of the Jesse Jacksons and the various mayors of the major cities. And we can raise enough money to lose 10 times and win 3 times and stay in business. You see, the home run concept is that as a black, you must come in with roots the first time. The second time, you must come in with something like roots, which means every time you come to bat, you hit a home run. That's not realistic business. What you've got to do is start out, develop the funds, enough funds, so that you can make 5, 6, 10, 15 movies and take your shot. Because anybody in the movie business knows that every movie is not going to be a hit. But yet, as black people, they tell us that, well, it's not going to make money, and you got one shot, and if that fails, then it's going to put black people back for 30 years. Well, that doesn't happen in business. We're just being fooled. You know, that's ridiculous.
I think we have to stop holding our hands out expecting someone to do something for us. So if I think the black film period would come back again, I don't think it will like that. But there's a whole group of young black producers coming up now. There's Jamal Fanaka, there's Leon Isaac, there's Max Julian, he's getting ready to do something. There's Leroy Robinson, who's shooting in Africa now. I'm hoping to get funding for my film, and there are a lot of us that rested for a while and now we're back on it, and we realized that for $1 million we can do a very good film and make quite a bit of money, and we don't have to go through the majors.
You've got Sidney Poitier, Charles Floyd Johnson, who produces Magnum P.I. You've got Ivan Dixon. You've got producers who are working on various television shows. Stan Robertson, who's recently been promoted to Vice President of Columbia Motion Picture Department. All of us are prominent producers in the industry. As a matter of fact, it comprises of most of the prominent producers in the industry, not all, but most. So each of us individually qualify on our own, but each of us were a victim of the circumstances of not being able to get funds to do the things that we want. So we thought collectively, if we got together, that's the good part about having problems, bring you together. If we got together, that collectively we can utilize our resources and our influences and our connects and walk in the door and create some employment, which we have been doing little by little. You know, there's been some, and we hope to achieve even more as we go along.
Now, I do feel that there's a way that certain things can be done. I think that in order for a number of black filmmakers to come on the scene, that a studio like Columbia, for example, has a classics division that they deal with foreign films. Special theaters, they cater to a special market, and they invest so much money in the advertising and promotion and also the production, which means that the total situation might cost you $6 million. Now, we have 50 cities in America with black population that could support 3 or 4 theaters in a city. These people are starved to see good films, not necessarily expensive films, but good films involving good black actors and actresses. Now, if the studio decided to create a division which would concentrate not on black films, but films that's geared for that market, a la the music business. On radio, you have rock stations, you have rhythm and blues stations. Michael Jackson is now #1 star in the world. He started with a black company and he started on black radio. So let's say there is a theater that black people can go and see a well thought out, entertaining film that didn't cost a lot of money, and also know that there's going to be a continual flow of product. This will then bring in profits. You can always upgrade, and if a film is good, it doesn't have to just be in that theater. Other people can go see it, and if it hits the general populace, that will then create our entree into this business. It's what's happening in the record business. If you take the record business and you look at it carefully, you can do the same thing in the film business. And that's the only way to really bring in a number of black filmmakers.
The future is for blacks to get together in this town and talk, and not talk, but demand, and not accept a job that, so you say, I'm not going to do it, and you tell me why you're not going to do it, and I will read the script, and I know that I have to agree with you. Maybe we differ a little, but the overall premise is the same. I have to say, I'm not going to do it. Then someone else say, I'm not going to do it. Now, if you want to do it, you want to change it, you want to blacken up somebody, like go back to minstrel days, you do that. Or if you want to recast it, then we scream. We go to the press. Not only this press anybody who will listen to it and talk about it. Embarrass them.
Hit people in their pocketbook, you know, get blacks to stop buying products that are advertised on shows where either there are no blacks or where black people are you know, badly represented. Get black people in America not to go to films where there are no black actors in the film, or where the black actors, you know, are shown in a negative way. They haven't called this boycott. I don't know why. I don't know what they're afraid of, but I think they should do it, and they should have done it, you know. Because what's happening in the industry is that the white people are saying that black people are not important to the film industry. They're not important to television. Okay? They say that all the time. I read it, you know. There's not enough of you coming to movies. There's not enough of you watching. You know, we don't care about you. So they're not thinking about black people when they're making a film, when they're doing programming. If we could show how strong we are economically, and we really are, we could really turn this industry around. I really believe that.
Things will get better if those blacks not only persevere, but persevere in a conscious, methodical, and in some ways devious, and I don't want to say terroristic, but devious way. When I say devious, I mean you just can't go out there with a good script because you're a good black filmmaker. You've got to be able to then put some other things into play. You've got to call some godfathers that you know on the inside. You've got to take an entity that is an established entity, align yourself with it. You've got to then also come up with something that's so good and so valuable that the established order wants it. Excuse me. And once they want it, then you've got a hook. You can't, if you're a black filmmaker or any other minority, if you're a woman filmmaker, if you're an Indian, if you're Asian, you can't just go in there with a good property and expect it to get done. You have to come in there with what's considered the second element of your being. First element is what you're going to do. Okay? First element, what you're going to do. Second element, how you're going to get it done. Minorities have that, and it's always present. Women have it. Women look at things in a man's world like this. I'm going to do this. Second, how am I going to get it done? We're white males, just, I'm going to do this, and they do it. But minorities have another level of consciousness that is always present. Number one, what am I going to do? Number two, how am I going to get it done? I think it's going to happen because it's economical necessity. How long can I keep someone starving away from food if the food is on the table and we're both in there? And he has the same opportunity to get arms, whatever that arms, whatever that means, whether it's a physical gun, a bomb, my throat, his throat. How long can I keep him away from that table if, number one, he's hungry, number two, my market is shrinking?
A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through. You'll grow in the ghetto, living second rate, and your eyes will sing a song of deep hate. The places you play and where you stay looks like one great big alleyway. You'll admire all the number book takers, thugs, pimps, and pushers, and the big money makers, driving big cars, spending 20s and 10s, and you wanna grow up to be just like them. Smugglers, scramblers, burglars, gamblers, pickpocket peddlers, even panhandlers. You say I'm cool, I'm no fool, but then you wind up dropping out of high school. Now you're unemployed, all non-void, walking around like your pretty boy Floyd. Turned stick-up kid, but look what you done did. Got sent up for an 8-year bid, so don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.